Okay, I think we can start now. People have more or less joined the session. Before we begin, I just want to let you all know that this session is being recorded. So if you are comfortable in being in the recording of the session, you can keep your videos on. And when we move to the Q&A, you can raise your hand and ask your question directly to the panelists. If you're not comfortable in being in the recording of the session, you can keep your videos off. And when we move to the Q&A, you can either put your questions in chat or you can send them as a DM to either me or any one of the panelists who I will be introducing shortly. I think that's about it. The recordings will be uploaded on our YouTube channel that I will send a link to, but it's called Project EduAccess. And the recordings of all our previous webinars have also been uploaded on our YouTube channel, except for the fourth webinar where we're having some troubles with the recording. So it's likely that you will not find the recording of the session on our YouTube channel, but everything else, including this one, will be uploaded. Okay, with that, welcome everyone to today's sixth and final webinar on assembling your Rhodes application, sort of bringing everything together and finalizing everything that you've been working on so far. Very quickly, this is not going to be a very presentation heavy session. I will just use the PPT to introduce you to our panelists, give you an overview of the scholarship, and then I'll ask a few questions to our panelists, and then we move on to questions from the audience. If I request that all of you keep yourselves on mute during the presentation and when the panelists are speaking. And when we open the floor for questions, you can raise your hand. And then when you are called on, you can unmute and ask your question, or you can put your question in chat. And if you are putting your questions in chat already, we are probably going to respond to them when we move to the Q&A. Okay, so we at Project EduAccess, we believe that access to higher education, leadership, and professional opportunities is a privilege that most people from marginalized communities are systematically denied through cost, information, and dispositional barriers. And we try to improve inclusivity in some of these spaces by removing barriers for marginalized communities in the Global South. We do this by providing mentorship, engaging in advocacy, running in-person and online capacity building workshops. And today we are collaborating with the Rhodes Secretariat India, and this webinar series is a part of a collaboration where we're trying to increase access to the Rhodes Scholarship, to put out information about the scholarship as much as possible and give as much detail as possible so there is more equality in the application process. So as I mentioned, this is part of a webinar series, and we've conducted 5 webinars so far. All of them have been recorded and uploaded on our YouTube channel, except for the fourth one. But it should be fine because the fourth one did relate to the third webinar, and so the recording of that is on our YouTube channel. Today is the final webinar as part of our webinar series that is going to focus on assembling your Rhodes application, any final questions that you may have, and just any final tips that our panelists may have for you as you get ready to finalize your application. We have with us 3 really wonderful scholars who are going to speak to you today about their experience. You may be familiar with some of them, and some are joining our webinar series for the first time. So we have with us Asma, who is going to be doing a master's in global and imperial history at University of Oxford, and she's a Rhodes Scholar elect for 2024. We have with us Zayan, who is going to be doing an MPhil in social legal studies at the Faculty of Law at University of Oxford and is a Rhodes Scholar elect for 2024 as well. And then we have Shreya, who's currently doing a DPhil in interdisciplinary biosciences and is a Rhodes Scholar from 2021. Same as me, I am Mispa. I'm doing a DPhil, which is a PhD in law, and I'm also a Rhodes Scholar from 2021, and I'll be moderating the session. Oh no, sorry about the formatting on this slide, but very quickly for those of you who are joining us for the first time and who are only getting introduced to the Rhodes Scholarship now, the Rhodes Scholarship is a fully funded scholarship that includes tuition, living expenses. It covers the health insurance you're required to pay and and includes one return flight ticket to and from India to UK. It's only for University of Oxford, which means that if you get the scholarship, you can only apply to University of Oxford. It's a postgraduate scholarship, which means that you apply for this either while you're doing your bachelor's or after you've completed your bachelor's. But it also includes a second BA senior status course, which you can look at, for which you can look at the conditions of tenure. There are 5 scholarships that are awarded for Indian students every year. There is no bar on the field that you can apply to, so it's available for humanities, social sciences, and STEM courses as well. But specifically, which courses are and are not eligible for the Rhodes Scholarship, you can have a look at the conditions of tenure document. It is not a need-based scholarship, which means that it does not look at your financial status and financial need in order to determine whether you would be getting the scholarship or not, but rather focuses on the Rhodes criteria and the application documents that you are required to submit in order to make their selection. The application for this scholarship starts prior to applications for University of Oxford, which means that you first apply for the scholarship, get the scholarship, and then you apply to Oxford. You do not need an offer from Oxford already to apply for the scholarship. And very importantly, there is no application fees. You go to the portal, it's free of cost, and you make your application and submit it. You don't have to pay anything. So there are two primary phases in the application process. The first is the written stage, which you are in right now. The application deadline is 1st August. For this, you are required to submit your official transcripts, your CV, a personal statement of 1,000 words, an academic statement of study of 350 words, and you are required to submit a few reference letters. Then, if you are longlisted, you're invited for a preliminary interview that happens online. It's a more technical interview. Then there is a penultimate interview that has happened for a few years, but it hasn't always been part of the selection process. So it really depends on the selection committee whether or not in your year this stage of the scholarship of the interview will happen. And then there is an in-person final interview that takes place for shortlisted candidates. There are 4 Rhodes criteria on the basis of which selection is primarily focused, and it determines how you write your statements and what you're looking towards when you write about your interest in the scholarship and why you are a great candidate for the Rhodes Scholarship. We've discussed these 4 Rhodes criteria in detail, so I'm not going to talk about them. You can have a look at any of our recordings, and you will notice how we stress on the Rhodes criteria. We explain it, we talk about it in detail. So this is something that you should familiarize yourself with if you are now starting your application. Finally, where do you go to understand about the Rhodes Scholarship? So on the Rhodes Scholarships for India website, you will find these documents that are extremely important. The first is the information for candidates, which is a document that gives information about who is eligible for the scholarship, what are the documents that you need, gives some information about the documents, how you write these documents. So it's the one document that has most of the information that you need when you're applying. The second is the guidance for FTs. So since you need to submit you need to give the details of academic referees and character referees, and it forms a very important part of your application, without which your application will not be considered. You have a guidance for referees that you can share with your potential referees who are writing a reference letter. We conducted a very detailed session on on reference letters yesterday, and the recording will be uploaded by tomorrow or day after. And then there is the conditions of tenure that includes all of the information that you may need about deciding the course that you want to pursue at Oxford on the Rhodes Scholarship. Finally, the one document that has all of the guidance and sort of suggestions from Rhodes Scholars all across years on writing your personal and academic statement. as well as drafting your CV and any other questions that you may have. This is called the Alternative Guide to the Rhodes Scholarship. It's an unofficial guide prepared by Rhodes scholars, again, across years, and every year as scholars get elected, they write their own experience and give inputs on that. So again, this is also available on the Rhodes Scholarships India website. So if you haven't had a look at this, please do look at this document. It is extremely helpful. Okay, with that, I will stop my very long presentation and move to questions to our panelists today. So once again, thank you so much, Zayan, Shreya, and Asma for joining us today and for agreeing to speak with our applicants. I'm just going to spotlight all of you so it is easier. We also have with us Bela, and I always forget to introduce her at the beginning, but we are also joined by Bela, who works at the Rhodes Secretariat India and is the one person who has been attending all of the webinars so far and has been responding to your questions. She's also the one who is responding to you over email. If you have written to the Road Secretariat about any of your questions. So thank you, Bela, for joining us and for sort of responding to our applicants' questions. Okay, now, Zayan, Shreya, and Asma, I have one question for you. So I'll be asking you three questions, and then we'll open it up to our audience. So my first question to you is, so today's 7 July, there's like 2.5 weeks, I think, 3 weeks to the application deadline. So, what did it look like for you when you were applying this time? How were you bringing together your documents? Were there any challenges that you were facing? How did you navigate them? So, what was your experience in sort of, bringing together your application documents? What did it look like at this stage for you? So, maybe we can start with Shreya and then Zayan and Asma.
Okay, I will try. So I can admit that I was a very last minute application because I was slightly terrified of Rhodes and I was convinced I was never going to get it. So at this point, I had reached out to my referees, which I would highlight as a really important thing to do early because that's something that's not in your control. You can sort of sit down in 2 days and 48 hours and force yourself to write a personal statement, and that's not ideal. Obviously, you want to do many drafts, but that's something that's in your control. But I think first things first, think of your referees, make sure you have enough to satisfy your requirements, and then email them because if your professors are anything like mine, they will take 2 to 3 business weeks, however they define it, to get back to you. So that was probably the number one thing. I had a rough draft of my CV, but just sort of listed everything that I want to talk about, but I hadn't gotten around to getting the wording right, formatting it, that sort of thing. And I had some idea of what I wanted to write in my personal statement that I then spent a few weeks sort of obsessing over in the background. Does anyone else want to jump in? Zayan, maybe?
Right. I think I would have the same tips that letters of recommendation and as well as your transcript is something that is not entirely up to you. So make sure that you've reached out to your referees and also to your examination departments or your college because sometimes they will take time and you should not leave these things to the last minute because as Shreya said that your statements are still something that you can just jot down in a few days and that is entirely up to you. But when it comes to your referees, they might take some time to upload the letter of recommendation and in some cases you might need to send follow-up emails to them to remind them to upload the letter. Never leave it. So the last date for uploading the reference letters is the 8th of August, but make sure it's done by 6th or 7th because you never know what can come up in because you have to submit 4 or 5 letters of recommendation, so you never know, one professor might suddenly have some work and might not be able to submit. So make sure it's done by the 5th or 6th of August. Then again, your transcript. And I understand that a lot of uh, examination departments and in different colleges might take some time to process it, might take time to get your transcript, or you may not be in college because this is usually the time when a lot of colleges across India have their semester break. So make sure if your college if your transcript is getting posted to you or you have to go there and take it physically, or if you have to ask someone else to collect it on your behalf, which is something that I did. Make sure you do it in advance so that the process is smooth, because these documents are very, very important and you need to get them uploaded. I think you should aim to get your transcript a week before the deadline so that you're able to upload it. And then if statements are something you can always work on. But I think what I did last year this time was I had not I don't think I had started writing my statements. I was thinking about them a lot, but I had not started drafting them. But I think that was also a good experience to just think about them, to reflect on a lot of things that I had done. So that really helped me then to draft it, because I thought about it so much. But yes, and I think the most important tip for this would be to, I think, get done with the things that are not entirely in your control, which is your transcript, your letters of recommendation, and in fact your 10th, 12th certificates, anything, any other document, your passport is required to be uploaded, I think. So if there is anything that you need to do in that department that is pending, please make sure to do that, and then you can focus on your statements as well. Asma.
Yes, thank you, Zayan, and thank you, Shreya. I think both of you did a great job summarizing my experience as well. I think for me, because at my university, the summer break begins at the end of May. So most of the professors leave for a sabbatical, and then they put up a thing on their email where they are not available to check their email or whatever. So my first concern, like everybody mentioned, was to get the letters of recommendation in, or at least get the word from the professors that they have received my email, they've received the documents I've sent them, and they would be more than happy to send in the letter of recommendation. And remember to always have a backup person you may want to ask a letter of recommendation for. Like Zion mentioned, somebody may want to back out the last minute. So because letters of recommendation form an essential part of your application, and like they mentioned, this is something that is totally out of your control. So that is the first thing you may want to get out of. And as for where I was at this time in the timeline, I think I was pretty much everywhere, because even though I started my application by first finishing my CV, until I submitted the application, which was I think at least 5 days before the deadline, I would still go back and do something to the CV. Like CV was the most basic document. It could have everything. I would still tweak around, like be worried, is it the right word I want to use or something like that. But at this point, I was roughly done with my CV. I think I had a rough draft of my academic statement, which wasn't like a 350 or 250 words. It was just bullet points that I think I wanted to highlight. I hadn't started writing my personal statement at all. What actually worked for me, and it maybe can be a tip for somebody who may find it useful, was that I took a chart paper and tried to answer few prompts that would help me get thinking about what I want my personal statement to look like. This chart paper doesn't have to be the same thing for you. You can do a presentation, you can do bullet points, or like you can do brain maps or something to keep you thinking, to help you start think about what you want your personal statement to be like. But my one recommendation would be to perhaps keep a little time in between academic statement and your personal statement, so that you don't say the same thing in both the statements. Of course, some things can be redundant and repetitive, but overall the essence of the statements are very different. um, and another thing I would like to flag is that what helped me was that after I'd written my personal statement or even my academic statement, for at least 5 days, I would try not to go back to it. We tend to go back to everything we write, keep reading it, then question the words we have written, and suddenly it doesn't make any sense anymore. For me, that was the case with my personal statement. I would read it so much that I got sick and tired of it. For me, it didn't feel like it had any meaning. Until one day, my sister had to tell me, stop reading so that you can come back to it with fresh pair of eyes and understand whether or not it says the kind of story you want it to say. I think that is where I was. Probably CV was more or less done. Academic statement I had started to write, but personal statement I hadn't started writing, which is not to say that you shouldn't start early. If you started early, it's well and great. You're already on track. But for those who are sitting here and thinking, oh my God, I haven't started, this is to say, like, you can still make a really strong application, but don't worry about where you are in the time period. Yeah, I think that is where I was at. Ms. Bud, do you have any other questions for us?
Yes, I do. My second question is, so this whole process comes with a lot of sort of anxiety. Everyone's doubting whether they really are a fit candidate for the Rhodes Scholarship. For those who are familiar, tend to have this idea of who Rhodes Scholars are and think that, they aren't the best candidate for that. At least for me, that was what the whole process looked like. Had I need like I just didn't think that I could, really make it for the scholarship. And I wasn't even thinking that I could even, pass the written stage. And I was like, I don't even know if it makes sense to give my time to this. So if this was something that you experienced as well, how did you deal with the constant anxiety that comes with this, the constant self-doubt, imposter syndrome? So maybe if you can share your experience of that. Again, same Shreya, Zayan, and Asma.
I mean, I definitely felt that. It's possibly why I put off writing my statements for so long, because there was a sort of long internal conversation of, should I even bother? Is this worth it? And I definitely had this image of what Rhodes Scholars are normally like, of very confident public speakers, very outward facing, and that's not me. I would rather sort of be in a little corner with a book. So to the extent that I was talking about this with my mom, and she's like, "Are you sure this doesn't sound like you?" But the way that I sort of got around it for myself is the Rhodes deadline is possibly the earliest deadline in a long application season. And so I just told myself that it was practice, that if I write these statements and this CV, then I can use it for all of the other things and scholarships that I want to apply for. And I don't know if this is still true, but this is something I used to tell myself, which is you're allowed to apply to Rhodes twice. And so I just kept saying, this is your practice year. It doesn't matter. This is just to see how it goes. Just get it done. There are no stakes here, and see how it goes.
Right. So I would actually resonate with what Shreya just said, that take it as an application. This is something, of course, no one can rely on. None of the applicants can be very sure about getting it, given how competitive the pool is, given how, everyone has done good work in their respective fields. So this is something you can't rely on, and I don't think you can be that confident about that, okay, I am going to get this. So I think in that case, just take it as what it is, an application for a scholarship. So focus on what they're looking for you. Try to come across as, as genuine, and try to craft a genuine application. And I think just this is because this is just the start of a very long application process. And if you are intending to do a master's, before you get the long list and the short list for Rhodes, and before this process gets over, you will be applying to other scholarships as well. So take this as it is just the start of a long application season. And then you will also have to submit, even if you get Rhodes, you have to submit an application to the University of Oxford in December, January. So this is going to be a long season, and might as well think about it this way, as Shreya said, that you get all your documents ready, your professors have your LORs ready, sort of. They just have to make minor tweaks here and there to then submit it. You have your CV, you have your statements, that you and you also have an idea of what to write, because different colleges or different scholarships do have different requirements, but you have a broad idea of what you want to do, because you have explored that, and you have answered those questions for yourself during this process. So yes, I think that just look at it as an application, give your best, and then there are a lot of applications that you're going to fill after this as well. Asma.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with everything that was said. For me, the biggest challenge was that of course, everybody's a self-critique, but we tend to go overboard with being humble and like humility and all of that. I was ready to self-disqualify myself even at letters of recommendation. I thought, like, if I ask professors letters of recommendation, they will probably say, "Oh my God, no!" Like, this was the extent of self-doubt I had. So it was really far along for me to think that I would even apply for the Rhodes Scholarship, let alone get it. So in case you're wondering the embarrassment you would feel to ask a professor, "Oh my God, I'm applying for this prestigious scholarship," know that you're not alone. People have also felt that. And my second challenge was that there was a point midway in my application process that I started to focus on all my lacks. Like I thought, oh my God, I don't know how to dance, or I don't have a gold medal in a specific sport, which is only like played in the UK, or I don't know, I'm not a rower, I can't like sing and all. So I should definitely not be a Rhodes Scholar. Try not to focus or boggle down on what you don't have, and just present yourself most authentically and talk about whatever you have. You don't have to be um, an A-lister in everything. You can simply just be interested in watching cricket and may have never like touched a bat. Even that is enough to show that you have more interests than what it takes to be an overall well-cultured, quote unquote, individual. So I think those were two of my biggest challenges. A, to think that to disqualify, and to think that I should have done all of these things to fit the criteria of Rhodes Scholarship. I now can tell you that, of course, there is no such criteria, and you should not think about those things. Yeah. Ms. Pam?
Yeah, thank you, Asma. Maybe I can also talk a little bit about this from my experience. So yes, I like from the get. So when I was applying, I was already 23, so it was my last year of applying, and I was having a chat with someone, and they said, you should apply for the Rhodes Scholarship, and I was like, I like what? That makes no sense. I'm like, I am definitely not someone who would become a Rhodes Scholar. I've not been like I've not been the topper, I've not been rank one. I have like, I'm not doing like, I'm again like I haven't like received like a gold medal in any sport. Um I haven't done any like dancing or singing since I was 5 years old. Like I haven't done any of those things. So I don't know if I like it makes no sense. But the logic was that one, it was like my last year to apply. And then second again that it is a very good practice for the whole application process. It really makes you think about yourself and why you want to pursue higher education abroad. If you do, then what do you want to do and why do you want to do that? Um, so it really does get you started for the application season, even if you don't apply, the same year that you apply for the roads. If even if like a year or two later, then you decide to apply, you would have done so much of the bulk work. You would have, haven't gotten, you would have spoken to your professors, you would have gotten reference letters. And the journey, of course, is not going to be smooth. There will always be something or the other that comes up. You realize that, oh, some professor is not willing to write a reference letter, so you need to, ask someone else. Maybe some of the things that you mentioned in like a big internship that you did, you're not able to get a certificate from it, or your transcripts are not coming, and your university has decided to take more time to declare the results for your semester. So all of these things are very common, but should not deter you from applying. These are challenges that everybody faces. That's how our education system, especially at university level, is built. That there are always challenges, whether these are administrative challenges or other forms of challenges. So just sort of take that in your as part of the application process. If there's something very serious, you can always reach out to the Rhodes India Secretariat, and they are very helpful in responding to emails and helping you think about what alternatives there are. And these webinars are also that space for you to ask scholars about their experience and what it is that they did or how they would navigate a specific situation. And and then the other thing I realized when I was getting really anxious, when it was just overwhelming me at, to a point where I wasn't able to work, and I just couldn't work on my application, was that I realized that I'm making an application for the Rhodes Scholarship to do something. There's something that I'm very passionate about. There's something that I really believe in. And it isn't about me individually as a person, but it's something that I believe in. And if I can't put myself out there and trust the process and sort of put my passion out there, then why should anyone else? And if I don't believe in myself or believe in the fact that this is something that I want to do and this is a problem in the world that needs to be addressed, then why should anyone else care about it? And I think that sort of depersonalizing it a little bit helped me to think that there is a cause that's bigger than yourself, and if you're not the person to do it, then it's fine. But if you are, then you should make a good case for it. And that sort of then helped me a little bit with my sort of anxiety and imposter syndrome as well. So I hope that helps some of you who are dealing with that. And again, as Zayan, Shreya, and Asma said, like really good tips on dealing with imposter syndrome and anxiety. My third and final question, and then maybe we take questions from the audience, is if you have any final tips for applicants, whether these are, specific admin tips or any tips that relate to, writing or putting together the documents or contacting the referees, or if these are more general, sort of like what to think about, what not to think about, tips. So anything that you may have from your own experience or from, your conversations with other scholars that you think is important for somebody who is, now a few weeks away from submitting their application should know. Yeah, so maybe whoever wants to start, maybe this time we can start with Zayan and then Asma and then Shreya.
Right. I think just to add to what Asma and Misbah said, on the Rhodes Scholarship website, there are certain myths about the scholarship that have been busted, like you need to be good at sports, that the scholarship is elitist or it favors certain people. All these myths have been debunked on the website itself, so you can go and check it out. I think that will give you a bit of reassurance if you have any such doubts about the scholarship. Second, it is very important, and this is something that we've, I think, also gone across in the other webinars, which is to proofread your documents before you submit them and make sure all the detail. So I think first check the grammar, check the spellings, all of that, but also like the dates that you put, anything else mentioned in your CV, your personal statement, your academic statement, make sure that everything is in order. So for that, make sure that everything is done, I think at least 4 or 5 days before the deadline, so you can get time to at least proofread the final version of your drafts. And I think the most important advice, you can reach out to, and please do, in case of any queries, reach out to the Rhodes Secretariat India, because that is, I think, the most authoritative answer that you can get if, in case you think you have any ambiguity regarding any aspect of the scholarship, or you're facing any other difficulty in the application. So even if it's a technical difficulty, you're not able to upload something, you're not able to access the portal, something like this, just immediately reach out to the National Secretary's office. And I think Bella has also mentioned the email in the chat. But also, if you have any other questions regarding eligibility, regarding any aspect of your application, I think it's best to reach out to the Office of the National Secretary, who will clear all your doubts. And at the end of the day, it is the most authoritative answer that you can get. So please I think you should feel free to reach out anytime with any query you have regarding the application. Right.
Yes, so I think Zayan really did a great job at summarizing. I think one tip I would give everyone is to first read, like Zayan said, read thoroughly your CV, whatever you've mentioned, make sure this is relevant to your application and you can speak more about it if you're asked to in the interviews or when you're supposed to substantiate what you have written. For the personal statement and the academic statement, I would say try to go to them with a fresh pair of eyes, but also fresh mindset. Don't read them every day or within 1 hour, at least twice, which is what I used to do at a point. And read every sentence and pause and reflect what it means to you. How do you like that sentence? But don't like to overstress. At one point, I used a word and I was pretty sure that word made no sense until I became obsessive about that word and it was nothing. So don't try to do that, and make sure that your paragraphs sync. What happens is that because we are so used to writing academic papers, we forget that these are not academic and we don't have a topic sentence every time, but still there should be a coherence. Try to sit with your documents a little bit, and then it doesn't do you any harm to go back to the documents at the Rhodes Trust website, the formal documents and also the informal one. After finishing my application, when I reread the informal documents, I felt very calm that I can resonate with all the tips that they have given. Like, it makes sense that all of this has happened. And my biggest tip would be to redefine what it means to be a Rhodes Scholar and take yourself, like try to picture yourself already as a Rhodes Scholar or somebody who's interested in pursuing something for the sake of intellectual curiosity. At my university, everybody associated Rhodes Scholar with their alum, which was Bill Clinton, and certainly Bill Clinton and I have nothing in common. So I had also started thinking that I have to be like Bill Clinton, even though I didn't want to be like him. So don't try to associate yourself with certain figures who may have been Rhodes Scholars in the past. Try to think why it matters, what you're studying. Like Ms. Ba said, taking yourself out of the picture, but also inserting yourself in the larger narrative. Maybe that will help. And one last practical tip I wanted to give to basically, don't wait until the last moment to submit your application so that eventually something happens, the website gets down and you, or the internet shuts down where you are. So you will be worried about not having gotten the application through. So don't wait at least until the last minute to hit the button send. Try to at least like few hours before, if not one day or few days before. Don't wait until the last minute. And I think my second tip, this is something a friend of mine asked because I was used to writing in American English and the spellings are different. She asked me, are you still using the American size and font and everything, or are you using the British English? And I was like, oh, maybe I should shift. It doesn't matter, whatever, you can use English in the Indian form of writing spellings and everything, which is slightly similar to British, or if you're totally using a different, that is also fine. But I think this gave me a sense of relief. Okay, yeah, I'm using the British spellings and everything. But overall, don't stress. And once you've sent in the application and the deadline has passed and you feel like you made a spelling mistake or something like an error, and think, don't overthink about it. I once remember watching a video of a specific panel of Rhodes scholars who were giving tips, and one of them mentioned that they had made a spelling mistake and they just thought that they had no chance. Don't try to go back to your application after the deadline has passed. I didn't do that because I was sure I would find something and not like it. So don't overstress. Try to approach your application with calm mind. Um, this is what I did, especially at a time when you know that you will still be doing other things. It's not like Rhodes Scholarship. For the Rhodes Scholarship, you're given a leeway from your university. Like I was in the process of writing my thesis. I had to go to my archival work, and it was summer, and everything was, I was burnt out. And especially when everybody around you is doing other things which seem to be more tangible, like, making job applications for consultancies and everything, and you feel like you are doing something entirely different. Be kind to yourself and take time to do other things also, but most importantly, prioritize your mental health and stay calm. It's at the end of the day, it's an application. You can't lose it if you don't already have it. So there's only you can only gain in this process. You can get an application and become a Rhodes Scholar, or you don't become a Rhodes Scholar, but you have stellar documents you can reuse, even your personal or academic statement. So don't think this is a race and this end line has some sort of winning or a losing goal. Just don't think in those terms, all or nothing. Just try to be calm. Shreya?
No, I mean, Zion and Asma covered basically the most important things. So I will try and keep this short and just go through a few tips. So your application is supposed to represent you to the committee, right? It's supposed to speak for you when you're not actually there. So one of the last things I did is I just read out loud my statements, and I wanted to see whether it sounded like me. And you wanted to sound like your voice. You wanted to sound like a human person is speaking to them, because I know that we all, especially because we all tend to write more academically, have a tendency to be very, very formal. And this is a formal application, but you still want to sound like a human. You want to sound like you. So one of the last things I did is I just read out loud in a room alone everything that I was submitting. And also I thought to myself, is this something that I'm comfortable talking about? If I was explaining this thought process to my sister, to my friends, what would I add? What would I subtract? How would I make this sound human? Which I think is really important, human and authentic. And on like two very practical things, save the final version like of whatever you submit, because that's what you go back and read before your interviews, because that's what your interviews will be based on. So don't keep looking at them because there will be mistakes, but save them so you know what your panel will probably ask you in your interviews. And for your letters of recommendation, if I remember correctly, you get a little notification saying that they're submitted. Once they're submitted, just write to your professor saying, thank you for doing this, because you will probably be bugging them for many letters of recommendation throughout the rest of the season. So you want them to like you and not be incredibly annoyed by the whole process. And I think that's everything from me.
Wow, amazing tips. I think, yeah, you've all covered everything that is important to think of when you are finalizing your documents. And yeah, I don't think I have anything to add to that as well, like from my own experience. Okay, so I think with that we can move to questions from the chat. If anyone has any question that they want to directly ask the panelists, please just raise your hand and unmute and ask the question. Otherwise, I will take the first question here, which is my academic statement is very formal, while the way I'm penning down my personal statement is way different than my academic statement. It's more like how I used to write my personal notes. Should I avoid such different writing styles for my two documents? Anyone? Yeah.
I can answer this. I think for me as well, my academic statement, at least in terms of how it sounded to me, was a bit more formal and bit more tightly packed and comprehensive. It had a little bit of jargon and course names and everything than my personal statement. That is probably because in your academic statement, you're talking about your courses, why you are a good fit for the courses and what you want to achieve out of them. However, in your personal statement, you're talking and reflecting more on who you are as a person, your beliefs, your passions, what drives you, what motivates you, and linking it together. But having said that, I don't think that these are entirely different statements. They eventually just show that you are a person with different facets. As far as your point about using personal notes is concerned, this thing, of course, should be obvious that you can't use short forms or emojis or whatever, or different spellings like slang spellings or something that is a bit too informal. It's not a text, it's not a chat to yourself, but of course, it's more of a personal, honest, authentic representation of who you are. So in that sense, if you're talking about how it sounds and whether or not they are technical, that is true, that should be correct. But in terms of how much detail you put into the attention, the spellings and the grammar, both of them should be on par with each other, and they should be the best versions in an academic or non so academic writing. So I think that would be my answer. In case I missed anything, please feel free to add anything, guys.
Yeah, Zan, go ahead.
Oh, right. I think, again, Asma, I think covered all of it. But again, this is something that is bound to happen because the requirements for the two statements are also very different. Your personal statement asks you to sort of tell your own story, and that is bound to be more personal. So you also tend to write it in a more personal manner rather than, in comparison to your academic statement, which basically has to just demonstrate that you are eligible and you meet the requirements for this course. So that is just, I think it will tend to be more formal than your personal statement. So you don't have to worry about that. But as Asma said, there are certain things that you need to keep in mind. So as long as you cover them, I think it should be fine.
Shreya, did you have anything to add, or should we?
I mean, not much because we didn't write personal and academic statements in our year. But the only thing I will say is, of course, they will be different, but you still want to sound like the same person. So you want to make sure that they come together and tell a whole story. So you can sort of make callbacks like between your CV and your personal statement and your academic statement, and they should all sort of come together, is what I will say. So even if the language is different, you want the content to make one complete story. And the motivations that you talk about in your personal statement, you want them to be reflected in the actions you've taken in your academic statement.
Great. Tisha, I see your hand raised. Do you have a follow-up question?
Thank you so much. Am I audible? So thank you so much for answering my question. So the thing regarding the personal and academic statement to different writing styles was that my academic statement is very formal, like the way we actually write a academic proposal and everything. And my personal statement, instead, like it's not exactly like personal short forms and other things which we use usually on our chats. But it's more like how we like I don't know, I was writing it and I felt like I'm using too big of some literary terms and words. I was like, should I use such big words? Like how should I put it? Like it's like when we write a story and sometimes we are thinking how we are actually how we want to actually like present our story and it becomes too much. So I was worried about that because it looks like I'm two different person. Like one is very formal and another one is like is a very different person. So that is what I was worried about. Thank you so much for answering. So does anyone have any advice on that?
I think I can maybe try and answer. Except, of course, like we said, what we wanted to. One thing I would add is that in my case also, I felt like, so the personal statement, if I'm talking about an incident or if I'm talking about an event that is related to who I see myself as a person and whatever, that had more graphic details. Like I was trying to explain what is happening, both to me and what I'm feeling in terms of the event, which is something I wouldn't do in an academic statement. Like you said, it seems like you're writing a story about yourself. In that case, I think you're on the right track, but it shouldn't, I think maybe because you're thinking too much about it, because you're thinking my academic statement just has research questions or what I'm interested in, it is a bit too formal. And in my personal statement, I'm not talking that much about the research questions, so it becomes informal. But at the end of the day, if you're talking about yourself in a formal way, it still becomes a bit both informal and formal. So I wouldn't say that you should worry too much about if this is an entirely different path you're taking. Like I said, I was using a lot of like imaginative narrative style to talk about when I was writing my personal statement as compared to my academic statement, which was, like you said, very formal, very technical, related to the course, related to the research or whatever. But in my personal statement, there was less of that and more of me, my voice, and my senses or my story. But what I would give you as a tip is that when you are done with your personal statement, when you're done with your academic statement, think of it this way: is this something that is reflected throughout the three documents? Like maybe this can be an activity mentioned in the CV, and then you use it as an example to show that you are fit to do a course, but it becomes a larger part of why you are studying this course, and it is more elaborative in your personal statement. So I think that would be my advice.
Perfect. I think, yeah, Shreya.
Just to quickly address the last thing you said about using big sort of fancy words, particularly in your personal statement, if that sounds like you, if that's how you talk, if you think that sort of adds to your story and that's what you're interested in, absolutely go ahead. There's no restriction, but also don't feel like you need to. Sort of simple, direct language is just as well. It just needs to represent your voice. There's no sort of condition or obligation to be overly fanciful or formal, just whatever is authentic to you.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you, both of you. Ria, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Hello. Actually, currently I'm doing my internship. So I would be getting my transcript after the month of November. So what I should do in that case?
Okay, I can take this. So you can submit your mark sheets or transcripts for the semesters for which you have received them. So if, say, for example, you're in your second year and you have 3 semesters for which you have your mark sheet, you can upload that and mention on the application portal that you're yet to receive the mark sheets or the transcript for the rest of the semesters, or if you yeah, so I think it's for the ones you can submit the ones that you have, and it's okay if you don't have all of them. And it's also not required that you have your final transcript and final degree. All of the mark sheets combined together can also work.
Thank you. One more last thing I want to ask, that the DPhil courses is for 3 to 4 years duration. So I can apply for it or I should wait?
I'm gonna let Shreya respond to this, and she started her DPhil directly on the scholarship.
So you can absolutely apply to the DPhil directly. The only question is whether that's normal in your field. So in sort of STEM science courses, it's very normal to go into a DPhil without a master's. So you can apply to it directly. It's a little bit at the discretion of your supervisors, but in general, you can apply directly to a DPhil. I think MISPA, that's less common in social sciences, and a master's is more expected. So that's basically the only criteria. It depends on your field and whether it's normal. And if you're looking at the requirements for a DPhil, they'll all be listed on the course pages on the University of Oxford website. And they have a little tab that says requirement that very clearly defines, like, you need to have an undergraduate degree, a master's degree, whatever it is, that are their basic requirements. So whichever course you're interested in, I would highly recommend just sort of looking it up on the website and seeing what their requirements are.
Perfect. Thank you, Shreya. Siddharth, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Hi, thank you so much. I have two questions. The first question is, uh, could you please go for my specific course that I'm interested in applying for the MPhil in social anthropology? The specific details of what courses or option papers would be offered are not available on the website, and I've tried tracking them down for a couple of weeks now, and I'm just going around in loops. So, does it make sense for me to email them asking, "Hi, what are the courses that you offer?" And my second question is more related to the process of writing your personal statement and academic statement. Did you, in your experience, kind of like give it to, of course, did you give it to other people to read? How did you take the advice that you got it from? Who were the people whom you asked to read your statement? What was the timeline for that? If that's something you could discuss. Thanks.
For the specific question about social anthropology, I don't know if anyone has any insights, but I would again just say that reach out to the course, whoever's the point of contact on the university website. And if you know anyone or you can locate anyone who's done this specific course, maybe reach out to them through LinkedIn and ask them if they are able to give their course handbook, so you know which options were offered in their year. It does see on the website that they do change the option modules every year, so that's probably why it's not mentioned. And I think it's okay if you don't have a sense of specifically what those options are, but they do give you a sense of what are the things that you will be studying. So if you want to mention that in your academic statement, that should also be fine. For your second question, I'm gonna let the others respond if they have any thoughts. Anyone? Right.
Yeah, and I can try to maybe start. I think according to the guidelines, from what I remember, your personal statement is something you can't really get direct feedback on. It is something that is more personal to you, so you should not have sent it over to something, or somebody else should not have had played a part in writing it. But in your academic statement, you can of course send it and get feedback on. So my personal statement, I didn't send it to anybody, neither did I share the thoughts about it with anybody. But of course, I don't think you can not informally talk about the questions or anything. You just can't like get direct feedback on your personal statement. This is just to avoid other people trying to sway you to think in a certain way, so that you can just be authentic to the question. I think for the academic statement, of course, you're allowed to get feedback on. And I just sent it to my friend to read over it, and I didn't get as much critical feedback. I think probably because I didn't want it to send it to a professor and they would maybe say something and I would feel demotivated. So maybe that is the policy I had. I didn't want to get a lot of feedback that would push me to change. And I didn't even have enough time. In my university, they do a huge application where like you send your application materials and you get a lot of feedback. Possibly because for the US, it's like in October, they do a lot of like back and forth for the application because the deadline there is very different. And when I asked if they could give me feedback for my academic statement, they said like, because it's too early, and they thought I was way too late to start my application. And I'm pretty sure they thought like I would never get it or whatever. But having said that, I think only one of my friend and I think my sister read my academic statement. For my personal statement, started talking about it way before writing. So I think everybody sort of knew that I was trying to think in certain lines. But as far as I know, I don't think you're allowed to send your personal statement to somebody. And rest, maybe what did you guys do to get feedback?
Yes, anyone else wants to? Maybe, yeah, Shreya.
I mean, it's sort of along the same lines. Quite honestly, I started writing my statements too late to probably get any real feedback on them. But I would talk to people basically. I would try to explain. I find writing difficult sometimes, but if I force myself to say it out loud, then I sort of have the words that are a starting point for what I want to write. So I would talk to my sister, I talked to my best friend. It wasn't really a formal conversation, so I didn't have any conversations about this with my professors or any sort of mentors. If that's something you can do, or you have something you have people you feel close enough to do that with, I'm sure that would be very helpful, but it's not personally something I did. I just talked to people I was very close to about what I was thinking about, what I wanted to write, and that sort of became the skeleton of what I actually wrote. But I didn't really send the statements to anybody.
Great. I think we can take questions from the chat now. There was one specifically about the personal statement and the 3 prompts that relate to the Rhodes criteria. So I know that Shreya, when we were applying, we didn't have these 3 prompts, but maybe if you can generally talk about how you thought of the Rhodes criteria in your application, and then Zayan and Asma can share how they thought about the prompts. I don't know if you were also given the self, other, and the world prompt. So yeah, how you thought about it, and maybe briefly, because we have discussed this in quite a lot of detail in our previous webinars, so don't worry too much. But since it's a different set of people, it'll be nice to hear what you were thinking of when you were writing about these things. So maybe Shreya, you want to start, and then Zayan and Asma.
So, like you said, we didn't have these prompts in our year. So this is sort of a broader thing of like, how do you deal with the Rhodes criteria? And the thing with them, and I think it's fair to say, is they're quite abstract, right? And in a way that's intentional, because there is no one person that perfectly encapsulates all of these things, and there is no one way to check every box. So it sort of allows for what you've done and what you want to do and what your ambitions are to sort of fit within that mold. But I tried to I had a list of everything that I'd done, everything I wanted to talk about. And I tried to sort it out into the different categories, and it ended up being a little bit of an organizing force in my statement of like, these are the things that I've done for my own interests. These are the things that I've done that I think have been more sort of community oriented or more teamwork oriented. And these are the things that I want to do given the chance, given the resources, given time and luck and all of the other sort of big future plans that you have. But I think that's all I have to say.
Great. Maybe I can also talk about it, since I also did not have the 3 prompts. I just had the Rhodes criteria. And one thing is that I wasn't very strict on like ticking check boxes, like sort of going, okay, I have this Rhodes criteria, I have this Rhodes criteria, I have this Rhodes criteria, because if I did, I realized that I actually didn't like do a lot of things that if I'm reading them to the T. And I was thinking of them more generally. I was very passionate about something. I wanted to work with the community. I had certain ideas that were academic in nature, and I had done work to suggest that I'm interested in it. And that was all. And so I wasn't thinking too much about, okay, I'm fitting this criteria, but I think I was thinking more broadly, what are they looking for? Like, what do these 4 together mean? And do I fulfill them, or am I able to justify myself as a good candidate thinking of all of them together? And I think again, it worked for my case. I don't but again, like, everyone has a unique experience, so it also depends on how they read your application. So I would suggest not getting too stressed about like finding one thing that fits each and every one of them, so you're able to say, okay, for this criteria I've done this, for this criteria I've done that. I think if you generally have like a range of experiences, or if you have things that you're able to say that makes you a good Rhodes Scholar, I think that should be fine. I don't know if that was a good answer at all, but Zan, Asma, maybe you can speak to the prompt specifically.
So I think one of the best advice that I got while I was in this process was, before I started writing, was something that I did was I started thinking. And there are a lot of things that come to your mind when you read these prompts, and there is a tendency to answer them directly. And because of that, it is easy to sort of then make your personal statement into a question answer thing where you're just answering the prompts one by one. So one of the things that I did was just to think about these prompts and to write down whatever I think about them, right? It's certain pointers about what I want to include, how this fits the narrative of my statement, how relevant this is. So I just kept writing these small pointers about what I want to include until I made the final call on, okay, this is something that should go in the statement, this is maybe not that relevant. So that is something that really helped me in the process. And as far as the prompts are concerned, you're not, you shouldn't be worried about, as Mispa and Shreya said, fitting all the checkboxes in the Rhodes criteria. It's more about, getting your true self across and also simultaneously demonstrating that you are a good fit or you are a good candidate for this scholarship based on the criteria that they have given. So you don't have to specifically mention that, oh, this is somewhere I was very truthful and I showed empathy, but through your experiences and through your through everything that you've done, it should come across. Like, of course, you would choose those experiences where you've demonstrated those qualities and criteria. But we have, I think, Project EduAccess has 2 webinars where we have discussed writing these statements. So you can check it out on the YouTube channel. I think that will give you a better idea. Asma.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with everything that was said by all three of you. What I think how I approached it was that at first I was really, really intimidated by these really impactful questions, like from your position in the world, what is the world's biggest challenge? And then which Rhodes Scholar quality and what do you want to achieve when you are, or how do you want to contribute to the Rhodes community or the larger Oxford community? What I did is essentially I tried to change these questions and flip them around to simplify so that I can help feel comfortable with them. So simply the first most important one, of course, the one about world's biggest challenge, I try to make it seem as if it was a question about what I want to do in life, even though, or what is a problem that I'm really invested in. I'm not saying a problem I want to solve and a problem I will solve, but rather a problem that really bugs me. Then it becomes a simple question, which you then simplify can simply be about what you're interested in doing at Oxford, beyond Oxford, after your Rhodes Scholar trajectory. Then it simply becomes a question about you. So that sort of helped me simplify the tension I was feeling about world's biggest challenge. As far as the question about Rhodes community and something like that is concerned, that can also be summed up in as a way and what are the qualities you're bringing to the table, but also what are the things you want to learn from others. This can also take up a very objective way. You don't have to have a subjective answer, a subjective way. You don't have to have an objective answer. And for the one that is usually the most stressful, the one where you have to identify a Rhodes quality, like Misbah said, I didn't even say that the Rhodes quality I identify the most with is X, Y, and Z in my application. In fact, it was a tip I received from one of the videos I watched, is that you don't have to quite literally say the Rhodes quality. You can explain it and still never say it. And for the readers may be able to understand the quality she's trying to refer from the action you're talking about. And this also allows your personal statement to have more character and depth, where you show what you're wanting, what you want them to understand, and not just simply tell. You can go on and say, I'm a very kind person, I care for the weak, but then we don't understand how you care for the weak, or what is your understanding of caring for the weak, or you are a multi-dimensional person, but we don't get how you are a multi-dimensional person. So I think I would rather simplify the questions first, think about them randomly, and not think that you have to answer them in your essay, because that sort of relieves you of the burden, like Zan said, of trying to fit a mold, or like Misbah said, to tick a box in the list. Take an essay, then fit it according to the criteria. Don't write an essay based on the criteria. Like, don't do that. So I think overall, just relieve yourself of the tension that you have to answer them and just talk about yourself. And then when you do, you realize that, oh, yes, I have a problem I'm interested in. This is something I'm interested in. This is a quality which makes me interested in this problem. And then at Oxford, I wanted to explore this and maybe talk to other people who are also exploring this. It's very simple when you think of it in simple terms and not like answers to a really huge problem. Yeah.
Great. I think that was a really good summary of how you all sort of navigated this. I just realized that I haven't been sending the link to the Google group for the Rhodes Scholarship. That again is a good place for everyone to put their questions and scholars. It's not an official group, so it's not a group that is handled by the Rhodes Secretariat India. It is an unofficial group, an informal group that Rhodes scholars have set up, and they respond to questions that potential applicants put there. And I was just thinking of this suggestion by one of the applicants that has put in chat that, maybe prospective scholars can come together in a session and sit and write. So if you want to facilitate that, you can perhaps float this idea on the Google group. Again, it's a very good resource. Now that the webinar series is getting over, so this is the last webinar as part of the webinar series. And if you want to sort of still keep asking questions, if you want to be in touch, that Google group is the place to do that. You can put your questions there, and there would be some of the other Rhodes Scholar. If you've not met them through the webinar series, you can you'll see them responding to questions. And so it's a very good platform to put your questions. Yes. Okay. Do we have any other questions in chat? I just want to clarify about the feedback question on who read your academic and personal statement, and I got this question in my DM. So it is. I think it's a condition that you have to attest to the fact that you have written your personal academic statement yourself, you've written your documents by yourself, but that doesn't mean that you can't ask your friends or your mentor to give you feedback. I think a lot of scholars do that, and so it's okay if you um, ask somebody, whether it's your professor or if it's your mentor or if it's a friend, to just read your personal statement or read your academic statement and give you feedback, as long as they're not doing the edits and changing them, the text. I think that's okay, but they can of course give you feedback on what they think of what you've written. That's completely okay, and I know that scholars have been doing that. Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. I don't see any other. Okay, there's one question about the CV. Just sort of how much detail one should include or should not include about their academics, work experience, and extracurricular activity. I know we've addressed this in the session that we did on CV writing. But if you want to just sort of quickly go over how you wrote your CV, so maybe you can start with Asma this time, and then Zayan, and then Shreya.
Yeah, I think for my CV, the CV that you already have is a good place to start thinking on what you want to include. I know there's a tip that many scholars give that you don't want to talk about or write about everything you have done, probably because some things may not be relevant anymore and you may have something that is more important. And like it is mentioned in the on the official documents, a Rhodes CV is much more comprehensive. Like you talk about your education, your work experience, research if you have done, any leadership positions. Then you also talk about other things like volunteer activities or something like that. So it's more comprehensive. So you will have to sort of try to first identify if there is something that is more pertinent than others. For example, it's not a CV you would just simply use for a job application where they don't care about for example, the awards you may have had and your extracurricular activities or dancing, debate, or talent. If it is just for example, a job that simply requires you to work on the desk. So having understood that, then you can try to think of what I did is that I tried to compare a CV, which is what is called, but I save it as a full CV. Full CV is where I have everything on, and then sort of pick and choose some things which are more important, and then try to rewrite them in words that are more applicable for a Rhodes Scholarship. For example, I did include my recent research works or my thesis and a few internships that I thought were relevant, but not everything, because some of them were old. Not that is not to say you can't put an old internship, but it just I couldn't resonate with it anymore. Because remember, the CV is something that they will have a hold of throughout the 3 interviews if they do 3. So you will be asked questions about it. So something you can talk more freely about is the best thing to put in your CV. And I also put in, I think, a last line of hobbies, which was brought up very in mostly all of the interviews. So it's a good way to personalize your application. You don't have to just seem like a person which is very rigid. So you can personalize your CV. Of course, by personalizing, we don't mean adding a picture or changing the entire style or making it too fancy. One thing about CV is that you just have to make it simple. That is the thing. You don't have to worry about the font or whatever, everything, the details of which are given in the application. So that is how I try to go about my CV, compare it with the full CV and try to rethink every activity and see whether or not it is useful for me for the application. But you don't have to have a lot of activities to put. If you have done only 2 or 3 some things which are all relevant to your course, you can put all of them. So it's just a subjective opinion. I think Shreya or Zian?
I think Asma comprehensively covered everything, and we also have a webinar that has been uploaded, a previous webinar on the CV. But yes, the answer to your question, again, to repeat essentially what Asma said, is that the distinction between what to include and what not to include will lie in the relevance to the scholarship, right? So if you think an internship, any work experience, any extracurricular activity, so something that you've done, it's an extracurricular activity could be more relevant to your profile for the Rhodes Scholarship than an internship that you've done, or some academic endeavor that you've undertaken at your university. So it all depends on how relevant it is to your profile, how you resonate with it, and how you feel about it. So at the end of the day, it's not that internships or academic anything that you've done in the academic sphere is more important than the extracurricular activities, and you should stress more on that. It's more about how all of these are essentially more relevant to your application and to your profile. That's it. And no, just to answer this question, I don't think you should highlight anything in your CV.
Yeah, I mean, I think Asma and Zayan covered all of the most important things, but just to echo what they've said, I think there's some guidance on this, and I think there's already been a webinar, but in terms of format, you want to keep your CV as simple as possible. No highlights, no pictures, no sort of fancy columns, just plain text that's easily read, because you want all your experiences to speak for themselves rather than any formatting that might make it more interesting to look at. And also, like they both said, I think it really is worth including your hobbies or your interests, and they don't have to be formal. It doesn't have to be one photography contest. It can just be interested in photography or interested in painting. And I think they really help make your application come to life as a sort of complete human being with lots of interests and lots of different avenues. And like Asma said, they make good conversation topics during your interviews.
Great, that was really wonderful. Thank you so much, all three of you. I think I will take one last question and then we'll end the session, which is on fourth year funding if you're applying for a PhD. So there's some confusion around that. So maybe Shreya, if you want to clarify about how it works on for STEM courses, and then maybe I'll speak for social science and humanities.
So I think this is listed on the conditions of tenure, but basically Rhodes covers 3 years of scholarship completely. So this means tuition to the university and stipend. And then in your fourth year, and most DPhils in the sciences tend to be 3 to 4 years, with most people finishing after 4 years. Your fourth year, in terms of your in terms of your fourth year, the trust will normally cover the tuition. So that is something that they continue to do up to 4 years. But there is a problem in finding your stipend. This is something that the trust currently does not offer fourth year stipends, and is something that has to come from a different source. In the sciences, there are a couple of different ways that this can come. You can either have direct funding from your department, because most departments run sort of separate direct entry DPhil courses. And this is something that you can agree upon at the beginning. You can get direct funding from your lab or from your professor, depending on how their grants work and whether they have space for you. And also there are doctoral training programs that are all listed on the university's website. They're either under the Center for Doctoral Training or the Doctoral Training Center, which are somehow two different departments, even though they have the exact same words. But the point is, these are sort of fully funded DPhil places. And in general, the Rhodes Trust will try and come to an agreement with them for them to fund your fourth year stipend while they cover the tuition fees. And there are also other scholarships around Oxford that can sometimes work in conjunction, but the sort of bottom line is there is some uncertainty about your stipend in the fourth year that can be handled. So don't feel like you can't applied to a DPhil. There are lots of other funding sources, but the Rhodes Trust does not guarantee it. And then Miss, what do you want to take over?
Yeah, so it's quite the same for social sciences and humanities. So for the fourth year, there is no fee requirement. There's no fee liability. So for a PhD, the fees is only for the first 3 years, which the scholarship will cover anyway. And then for the fourth year, there's a very small continuation charge that I think the scholarship also pays. And then for the living expense and stipend, it's a bit of a like looking here and there. For my year right now, since I'll be going to my fourth year, I mean, it's my fourth year on the scholarship, but not on the DPhil. But basically for fourth year, it's a little tricky. I think there's some amount that the scholarship may be able to give you, but you'll have to again either apply for funding through your college or your department and see if you're able to bring together some amount for that. Yeah, I think that's mostly it. I think okay, Mitra, maybe we'll take your question and then we close the session. I'll try to respond to the other questions in chat.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for answering all these questions, first of all. And I have one simple question. That's a basic question for all the essays writing part. Do we need to prefer the course name in personal statement in the like a heading or in a academic statement or in a CV? Do we need to put that as a compulsory one or what it can be?
Anyone?
Yeah, I think I can answer. What I did is I put the course name, 2 course names in my academic statement. So in your academic statement, because it is only about the courses you want to pursue and why, I think you should recommend say the names of the courses you're interested in as a part of your essay. So whenever you're talking about in my first year, whatever, X, Y, and Z, in my second year or whatever, I further want to pursue a DPhil or second master, this will allow me to do X, Y, and Z. So definitely in your academic statement, you should mention the course, not just as a title, like in the essay you should mention. This is what I did. In my personal statement, if I remember correctly, I think I did mention the first course. I didn't mention both the courses, but I don't think personal statement, I don't think it's a necessity to mention the courses, but academic statements it is. And CV, I don't think you have to mention the courses. It is more about what you have done, not what you want to do. As far as the title part of it is concerned, I didn't put the title to my academic statement. The personal statement, the title was very different. It was not about the course, but I don't think there is a need to put title in either of the personal statement or in either of the statement, because word limit is of course very fixed. You may want to use those words in your essays. But yes, academic statement, you need to mention the courses. Personal statement, you can if you think it fits the narrative. CV, you do not. If that is correct, guys, please, yeah, okay.
Right, I think you should, of course, include it in your academic statement. And I also included, I think, the name of my first course in my personal statement, only to explain that this course will help me do so and something along the lines of this. But it's not important to mention it in your personal statement, but you should, of course, clearly mention the courses that you wish to undertake in your academic statement and how you're prepared for them. And of course, I don't think it needs to be a part of your CV, which, as Asma said, is more about what you have done.
Yeah, thank you. And also, while we are moving for our universities or our undergraduate degree or work experience, we used to prepare some CV, right? In the format like to attract the members. We used to put headings like education skills in a bold box, and we need to describe that. So in this, I have seen that they have an empty box and we can enter manually about our CV manually, or we can upload document. So I have a doubt that it can be a basic, a very basic, simple heading, skill and the description, education and its description. It can be like that, or it can be, I don't know, I can't explain correctly. It can be simple. Can I make it simple?
You should make it simple. Not even you can't. That I think that's basically what's expected of just a little heading, and then your experience is listed underneath them, and then repeat with education, skills, extracurricular activities, whatever headings you want to write.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. I think we've answered all of the all of the questions that are in chat. Lots of questions on CV, but these are questions that we have addressed already in our session on writing your CV for the Rhodes Scholarship. So if you haven't watched the video for that, please just go and have a look at the recording of the workshop, because we have addressed your questions there. And I am going to send all of the links again in chat. So the first is for the Rhodes Scholarship for India website, and I just realized that if you haven't opened the link, you wouldn't know that to apply now, that the portal to apply now is on the website. So please go to the website. The information candidates document that has all of the basic information that you need when you're applying. The third is the conditions for tenure. If you are trying to figure out which course you want to study, what is the combination, master's, PhD, or directly PhD, have a look at the conditions of tenure. Fourthly is the guidance for referees. So this is the document you will send to your referees when you're asking them to submit a reference letter. The fifth is the alternative guide, which is the document that includes information about writing your personal statement, your academic statement of study, and some tips on writing your CV that's put together by Rhodes scholars across the years. It's an informal guide and has a lot of sort of examples as well. So please have a look at that alternative guide. The sixth is a very important document. It's called the Guidance on Generative AI, that has information on navigating sort of the use of ChatGPT and similar AI platforms. Please have a look at that, because if you are found to have used ChatGPT to write all of your statements, you will be disqualified. So please have a look at what is and is not allowed for ChatGPT and such AI. Lastly, we have the Linktree link where you can sign up to get the link of all the recordings of the session, but you can also alternatively just go to our YouTube channel, where you will find all of the recordings of our workshops, including the ones that we have done today and the ones that we did yesterday. Um, um, and then finally is the link to the Google group, which is basically from now, because the webinar series are now over, we won't be sort of here to answer your questions. So the Google group is a very good platform for you to ask your questions. This is again an informal group that is monitored by Rhodes scholars across the years, and so people have been using it to ask their questions about their specific application. Please use that platform to ask questions, and you'll have some of the other scholar responding to your question. And then finally, if you have any specific questions about eligibility, any technical questions that relate to the application process, then you can directly write to the India Secretary at rhodestrust.com. I've again put that in chat as well. And I think that's about it. For the recording of the fourth session, I mentioned this earlier as well. We're having some troubles with the recording, so it's unlikely that we will be able to upload a recording of that session on our YouTube. But for everything else, it will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. I'm not sure if we can give you access to the slides themselves, but again, you have the recording that and where we've used the PPT, so you can of course navigate the PPT through that. Yes, I think that was a lot. With that, we end the session. Thank you so much, Shreya, Asma, and Zayan, for joining us today, for being so patient with the questions. and for sort of sharing your experience with potential applicants, so sort of honestly and authentically. Thank you so much, everyone who joined us today and who has been joining us for the webinar series. Once again, a big thank you to Bela and the Rhodes India Secretariat for facilitating the organization of these webinar series to make the application process much more equal and accessible for students who are applying and who may not, have the network of information for the Rhodes Scholarship. So really, thanks so much, Bela, and thanks to Dhwani as well, who hasn't joined us but is the Rhodes India Secretary, the Rhodes India National Secretary. So yes, thanks so much for sort of organizing these webinar series. And thank you everyone who joined us. All the best with your application. Yes, Bela, sorry.
Yeah, hi. I think we are almost done. We are wrapping up. I'm so sorry. I have bandwidth issues. I cannot put on my video, but I just want to say a big thank you to EduAccess and all of the scholars who have been with us on this huge journey. I think it's been 6 webinars and so many people. Oh my God. Like I think we have all had like 130 people at one time. So it's been a massive effort that we are doing this time. And I really hope that, first of all, a big thank you to all of them. It's been fantastic, and they have given such wonderful tips. And please, I hope that all of you will incorporate it into your application. And I would encourage all of you to please apply. And, you know, it's don't think too much, about whether like they have mentioned many times, don't think too much about whether I'll make it or not. Just go ahead and apply. Just be true to yourself and put in an application. And I hope I can see some of you on the other side. Okay. Good luck, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you, Bela. And yes, all the best, everyone. Thank you so much. And yeah, thank you, Zayan, Shreya, and Asma. Really. Bye, everyone. Take care.